Welcome. In this lesson, we're going to be covering how to create a lock combo guessing game from scratch. I've applied a little bit of styling to it. We've got a message area. The button says start game. We start the game, update the combo, and press unlock. So we select the combo that we want. If the numbers are too high, they're going to be red. If they're too low, they're going to be blue. We try a different combination. And when we get the numbers correct, they go green. We see that this last one here is still too high. And once we get the combination correct, it lets us know, and then we can restart the game. It tells us how many guesses it took in order to get the combination correctly. Let's go ahead and set up the game area. On the left-hand side, I've got the editor opened, created an HTML file, and within the HTML file, we just have the one page element with a class of output. So this is where all of our game content is going to go. We're going to construct everything dynamically using JavaScript. Link to a JS file, so calling it app5.js, and this is app5.js. Currently, it's blank. We're running the HTML file in the right-hand side within the browser, and I'm also using Chrome. I've got the DevTools opened at the bottom, so anything that we do within the JavaScript, we can see the output being output within the console. And this is running the live server within the Visual Studio Code, which is the editor that I'm using. So that's where I'm able to, once we save the JavaScript file, we can see the output right away within the console. So let's begin by selecting the main page element. So this is where all of the game content is going to go. Using the document query selector, select the element with the class of output. Now we are going to be constructing a number of page elements. So I'm going to create a function in order to handle the construction of the page elements, which will make it a little bit easier. I'm going to just call it maker, and within the maker function, we're going to require some of the parameters, and we're going to be creating a message area. So that's going to be the first page element that we're going to create. So creating message and running the function maker, and then this is going to return back the message object. So within the maker, we need to know what type of element that we're creating. So in this case, I want to create a div, and this is going to be the element that we're creating. So element type or element tag, and then within here, create the element. And using the document create element, and we need to indicate with a string value the type of element that we're creating. So in this case, we're going to create a div. Then we're returning back the element. We also need to have a parent element. So this is going into output. Output is an object, so we're going to just pass that through as an object. It's going to be the parent element. So we can use the parent element here as we're returning it, and then we can do an append child, which will actually return back the same element that we've created, appending the child to it. So we don't see anything yet on the screen. Let's open up a little bit bigger within the body, within the output. There's our div that we just created. So we're able to create the div with JavaScript. And we also want to have some content. So just call it HTML content. And within here, we'll just call it hello world. And then we can update this as needed. So within the parent, and then we've got HTML, and selecting the element, and then updating its inner HTML, set it as whatever we've got for the HTML. So now we've got the hello world being written within the element, and we see that there on the right hand side. Now we could also include a number of other attributes as well within this statement. So for now, what we're going to do is we'll just create it as these three parameters within the function, and that's being able to add it to the page. So the message area can serve as an area that we can provide messaging to the user. So here we're just going to write press start to begin. And when we are creating the game experience, we can go through step by step. So what we want to show first to the user, and then the next item that we want to show is we want to show a start button. Using maker once again, we're going to create a button. This is also going to get appended to output, and this will just say start game. So there's our button that has the start game. And then once the button is clicked, then we want to start game. So we can use a click event using onClick, and then this will run a function called start game. And just to keep it clean, usually I will link to the function and it won't do an anonymous function. So that way it's a little bit easier to track what the functions are doing, especially if you've got quite a bit of stuff going on within the function. So within the console log, let's type just the word start. So when we press the start game, go over to the console, there's the word start appearing within the console. So now we've got the event where we've got the message area, we've got the button to start the game, and we also need one other object, and this is going to be the game area. So once again, using the maker, and this will be a div sitting within the output, and it's not going to have any content in it, so we'll just leave it blank there. And this is going to create the game area where we can start creating the interactions for the games. So now we've got a message area to communicate with the user. We've got a button to start the game process and the interaction. And then we've got a game area where we're going to make the game area. Let's set up also a global game object. So this can hold parameters that we need for the game. So the number of combos. And so this is going to be set dynamically, and we're going to generate them dynamically once the game starts. So right now we're going to just go for combos. We'll set them up as 3, and then we can update these dynamically. So these are all going to be working the same way, where we're going to generate a random number, and using this random number, this is what we're going to use in order to set the random value. So these combos are going to be a random value from 0 to 9, and that's what we're going to generate, a random value from 0 to 9. And this is the number of items that we're going to create. So once we start the game, we need to set up the game board. So we'll run a function that's going to set up the game board, and that will be one of the first things that starts there. So once we click the button, we don't need the start button anymore. So update its style and display, and we'll just set that to none. And I'm actually going to set the button style to display as block. And then when we show it again, if we need to show it again, it'll just show as a block. So we click the button, that disappears. We want to update the message area with new information for the user. So let's set the, and we'll use text content, and we need to create an unlock button. So it says update the combos, press unlock. So we need to create the combos within the game board. So that's where we can add them into this main area here. We want to create an area within the game area that we have the combinations. So that's going to be sitting within the main game area. And we also want to have a way to check the different locks to see if they're correct or not. So we're going to do that as well. And each one of those is going to have an individual value that's going to be set whenever we reset the game board. So let's set the game board up, and we'll set up the ability to move the locks up and down. So creating a loop, we're letting the value of I loop while I is less than game combos. And this is where we can dynamically generate as many as we need, or as many as is set within the combos. We also want to set up when we're starting the game. Let's take the game score, and we'll set the game score to 0. So this will be the number of tries that the user is doing in order to get, and maybe we can call it tries. So it's a little bit better. So this is the number of tries or guesses that they're doing. So set that to 0 so that we can track those and create a scoring mechanism within the game. Let's go ahead and create the element, and using the maker function, we want to create an element which is going to be an input. The parent is going to be the game area object, and within the HTML we're just going to have a value of 0. So let's see what happens. So there's our inputs there, and we'll actually just set that to be blank because we don't need any HTML within there. So when we go into the elements, there's our output, there's our game area, and there's the inputs that are created. So we want to update these inputs, some attributes. So set the attribute and the attribute type is going to be a number because we don't want any letters, we just want numbers. We're also setting the attribute maximum value to be 9, the minimum value, and set that to be 0. So it's plus start game. So there's our values. Let's set the default value for it. So set the default value to be 0, start the game. So there's our combos. We can move them up and down. We also need to have a button that's going to be checking to see if it's correct or not. And that's what we add after. And we're doing that within the setup of the game board. Button 1. And we can use the maker again, creating a button. The parent is going to be the game area, and the content is going to be unlock. So start the game, and there's the unlock button, and then we need to add an action to the unlock button, which is going to check to see if each one of these elements is correct, if the numbers are correct. So we want to generate a random value that's going to be the correct value for the element. And we can do this within an array. So within the game object, set up a blank array, which will hold all of the combination items within the index sequence. So as we're looping through, let's add those items into the array. Let's also just set up a random value. And I'll do this as a const. So the value is going to use the math floor, and then math random to get a random value, and we want a number from 0 to 9, so we just multiply it by 10, so that will return back a random value from 0 to 9. And then we want to add that value into the game array, so select the game array and push the value into it. We'll create a game array with the number of items there, and there's our random values. So this combination is going to be 2, 4, and 9. So what we want to do is we want to check to see if it's correct, and if it's not correct, then we can handle that. So when the button is pressed, when button 1 is pressed, we're going to run a check. So just do an on click, check combo, and we'll run the check combo function. And actually we don't need to invoke the function. Let's create the function, and this is the function that will be run. So check combo, and this is going to run through all of the elements within the game area, and it's going to get the values from them. So let's select the game area, and we're going to do a query select from the inputs within the game area. So ins and document query selector all, selecting the element, and within the maker, let's update so that we can add in a class. So element class list add, and then it'll add whatever class that we want to add in. And then now let's update these to be the various classes, and these can just be string values. So that will be a class of button, and we can just add all of the buttons as the same classes, and then this is going to have a class of game area, and just updating, adding in classes to all of the places where I'm using the maker. So let's see what we've got now within the elements. So going down into the elements, so we've got the classes are added, and we've got the classes of combo, classes of game area. So we've got a number of different ways that we can make the selection. So now when we are doing query selector all, when we're doing a check of the combo, we can actually check for all of the element combos. So all of them with a class of combo, looping through for each one of those elements. We can console log out within each element whatever the value is. So going over to the console, start the game, unlock, so we get 3 values of 0. Now we get 0, 1, 2, 3, so depending on the element. And we want to just check against the index value of each one of the items that we have within the game array. to see if there's a match. So within the game array, and this is where we can use the index that we have. So we're looking for a value of 0 for the first one, 9 for the next one, and 1 for the last one. So that's how we're getting the different values. So let's try this where we can, as we're looping through them and we're doing a check of the combo, we can check to see if these values match. So instead of logging onto the console, we'll turn this into a condition, checking to see if there's a match. And if there is a match, then we can select the element. And let's go ahead and we're just going to add its background color and set that to maybe green. And I'll style color, and let's add all of the font colors to be white. And then if it's incorrect, let's set that to red. So let's see what this looks like. So start the game, unlock, so they're all red. I can try some different random values there. Let's check the game value and just see what we have for the values in the array. So the first one needs to be a 3. So once that's correct, it goes green. And once that's correct, it goes green. Once that's correct, it goes green. So that's our way to do a check to make sure that our combos are coming in properly. And now whenever it's wrong, it'll go back to being red. So the objective is to get them all to be green. And then that's how you know that you've actually solved it and you've got the right combination. It's going to be dynamic. So if we want to have 5 combos there, we start the game. We can have 5, and they're all going to work properly within the page elements as we're unlocking them. Update the text message. Let's have a counter 0. And then as we loop through, once we do get it correct, then increment the counter by 1. And then within the message area, let's update this and output the value of the counter. I'm using the backticks, so those are the key to the left of most keyboards, the 1 on the most keyboards. And then this will just be checking to see how many were correct. And then we can also have a win condition. So it says we got the 1 correct. And then these will adjust if we do get additional ones that are correct. So before we do that, we're going to also have another condition, and this is going to be the win condition. Because we do have a counter, we can check to see the value of the counter and see if it's equal to, or even if it's equal to and greater than the value of the length of the items within the array. We've got 5 items there. If counter is equal to 5, or if it's even greater than 5, which it shouldn't be, then we know that this is a win. Write the message, and here the message is that we've got them all correct. Say the message, the lock opens, you got them correct. Let's adjust this to be slightly less. And when we start the game, as we're setting up the game board, I'm also going to output into the console the game object. So that way we'll see the combination. So there's our combination. So it's 7 to 5. Let's try that. So unlock, we got 1 right, 2 right, and C. So then we got the win condition, lock opens, you got them correct. So now when we press unlock, that's the correct. We're getting all of the combination correct. The game is working. You can play through it, try it out, and provide some hints there for those values to see if it's greater than or less than. So maybe we want to have, instead of just going red, we can have different color combinations if it's higher or lower. So if a value is too high, then we can have a condition here that we're seeing if the value, so if the guessed value is greater than whatever this value is, it'll go red, and otherwise we can set it to go blue or something. So if we guessed too low, it should go blue, and if we guess too high, it should go red. So this way you can provide some additional hints to the player. When we're setting up the values, we can set them up as 5, or we can even set random values there. So it doesn't have to be a set value, we can just set a random value there. So when we start the game, it's just going to have a random value. So it looks like all of these are still too low, and that one's too high. So this gives us a better way to, we also want to track the number of guesses. So we've got the guesses that is sitting at 0. Select that, and every time there's a check of the combo, we're going to increment the guesses. So let's again play through it and just make sure that we do have the proper game flow. So this is one of the important things when you are creating the game, that you make sure that you have a good game flow, that everything flows and that there's a win condition, and give the option to the player if they want to start again. So let's try the unlock, and lock opens, you got them correct. We can also tell the user how many the guesses it took. You got them correct. It took whatever number of guesses that we have, and that's contained within the game guesses. So that's the one that's incrementing there. So we've set it at 0 when we start the game. And looks like lock opens, you got them correct. So we need to save that. Should be when we get it correct instead of how many times. And we can also output the guess number here. So whatever number of guesses that we're currently at, and just remove that extra quote there. So guess number 1, guess number 2, guess number 3, guess number 4, and lock opens, you got it correct, took 5 tries, or 5 guesses. So once the game is working properly, let's update this, where when we do get it correct, we can run a function for end game. So we provide the feedback to the user, and here we've got the function that we're called end game. And what do we want to do here? So we want to hide the button so we can allow them to replay it. So there's no use constantly guessing once they've got it correct. And that's this button here that we've set within this function. So it's not a global button. So we might want to select this button, and this button is sitting within the game area. So we can make a selection of the button as well. So let's do that, where we're selecting our button 1 using the document and then query selector. We're selecting the button that's within the game area, and button 1, style, display, and set that to none. And just make sure that we are able to select the button properly. So our game area class was with an uppercase, so it was camel case. 5 guesses, and we actually want to show the original button 1 to restart the game. So let's do that as well. And set that to be block. And this actually should be sitting within the end game. So we've got the start game and end game. And play through it again. So lock opens, you got them correct, it took 4 guesses. Let's do the start game again. So it didn't actually remove the content that was within the game area. So let's select the game area, and we're going to remove the content there when we're setting up the game. So within the game area, let's set the inner HTML and set that to be blank. So it took 2 guesses and we've got it correct. So update the combos and press unlock. And once again, we went through the 3 guesses and we've got the option to start game. So it does look like it is working properly. And now we can apply some styling to make it look a little bit better. And I'll also update the number of combos. So set it to 4. And because we do have the classes within the message area, can apply some styling. And this is up to you how you want the styling to look. So within the message, let's add a little bit of padding around it. 10 pixels, text, can center align the text, set the font size, maybe for the game area as well. We want to have some additional styling around it. So that will give us the game area. And then set a little bit of padding around the game area. And when we start the game, so there's the content within the game area. Maybe do a text align and center align the game area. So that will align that content in the center. And you can select the elements and apply styling as needed. So we've got the various buttons. We've also got the class of combo. So those are for each one of the combinations. So let's apply a border radius. So that will slightly round the button content. We can also text align to center align the text for the combinations. Let's do a font size. So make it nice and big. Let's update the buttons. So we've got the unlock buttons. So they're both class of buttons. And display them as block. So that will set them to a new line. And that one should be margin auto like that. Maybe set a little bit of padding to it. Or maybe a little bit less padding to the button. Again, you can adjust this as what needed. I update around the message area, set a background, and we'll also update the font family. So now we've got a fun game that we can play through. The lock opens, took 6 guesses, and we're able to start again and play through it a number of times just to make sure that everything is working properly. And then you can adjust the different styling as needed to customize your version of the game.